This is our class, and here the topic is identifying writer's perspective, and this one is very important. Actually, if we like to analyze the text, if we like to have a good concept about the text within a short time, that means time is very much stipulated in our level exam, and we don't have too much time to spend only on uh, analyzing this text. We'll have to write a lot, and that's why identifying text writer's perspective is very important for any students. Now, first of all, in this regard, we will have to understand what is perspective. Here, to explain this perspective, just I'd like to say here, while reading a fiction or non-fiction book, readers see and experience the events and feelings about the characters through a certain point of view, which is called a perspective. A perspective is a literary tool in another way. It's a literary tool which serves as a lens through which readers observe characters, events, and happenings. A writer may narrate the story from his perspective or from a character's perspective. Its purpose is to make the voice of a writer distinctive from other writers. That means actually this one is very, very important to know about the writer's perspective. And what is perspective? That means from which corner, from which point of view the writer is writing his text. This one is perspective actually. Now we'll have to think about the classification of the types of perspective. Here there are five basic types of perspective. Five basic types of perspective. What they are? They are first person perspective, second person perspective, third person objective, third person omniscient, and third person limited. These are the actually five types of perspective from which commonly a writer writes his text, his or her text. So first of all, we'll have to understand which one is first person perspective and how can we understand the writer is using first person perspective or any sort of text is written in first person perspective if it is written in first person perspective. So think about this first person perspective, when and how to recognize it. First of all, let's have a look on the definition, on the explanation of the first person perspective. First person perspective means writing from the perspective of the author or main character. Such types of perspective are mostly found in narratives and autobiographical writings. In these writings, the main character narrates his or her story and he uses first person pronouns such as I and we. The readers see everything through this person's eyes. That means whenever the writer is using first person perspective, the readers or the audience will be able to recognize, only to say the writer is, if the writer is using I or we, right? So first person pronoun is here, this one is personal pronoun, that one is I, and an inclusive one, that one is we. So these two will help our reader to a great extent to determine which perspective is it. Now we can have a look on the example. It was times like this when I thought my father, who hated guns and had never been to any wars, was the bravest man who ever lived. And you see here, this one is first person pronoun I is used. First person pronoun I. So this one you see, the writer, the narrator is using first person pronoun for himself. So this one is the example of first person perspective. Now again, let's have a look on the second person perspective. Second person perspective uses you. This is very easy. I think not that much complicated. This one is you. That means the writer is commonly, writer uses commonly the second person you. And you say here the perspective or a writer tells the story by using second person personal pronoun like you and your. So if the writer or if the narrator uses this second person pronoun you or your in his text, then obviously it will be a second person perspective. And we can see an example here, and we'll find in this example that the narrator is using you, the second person pronoun. You are a sculptor. You climb a great ladder. You pour grease all over a growing long leaf vine. Next, you build a hollow cylinder like a cofferdam around the entire pine and grease its inside walls. You comb your ladder and spend the next week pouring wet plaster into the cofferdam. Now open the walls of the dam, split the plaster, saw the tree, remove it, discard, and your intricate sculpture is ready. This is the shape of part of the year. So here, what we have discussed. First of all, I tried to explain here what is perspective. Perspective is the point of view of the writer, which is expressed in the text. That one is perspective. So if there is any confusion about the explanation of perspective, I think we should raise the question, what is perspective? Then I said, what I said the main 5 basics perspective, 5 basic perspective. What are they? They are first person perspective, second person perspective, third person omniscient, third person objective, and third person limited. So these are the basic 5 types of perspective, and we have learned. And I have already said this one. What is first person perspective? That means whenever the readers see that writer is using first person pronoun I or we can think it to be, I mean the readers can think it to be first person perspective. And I have also given an example here. That one is first person perspective. And let's have another look on the second person perspective. Here what the writer is using, the writer is using second person you, and you and your. That one, this second person pronoun is used in the text. And if I mean the readers, uh, see that the narrator is using or the writer is using second person pronoun you, then it is easy for us to understand. Then this one is written from the second person perspective. And I said here, I have given an example here. You are a sculpture. And if we have a careful look on it, then it is clear for us that you is the second person pronoun and frequently used here. Frequently used this you. You is used in different sentences here. We can see. So obviously we can think it to be second person perspective. But sometimes it is also important that sometimes the narrator uses second person pronoun. Sometimes using second person pronoun in a inverted comma, the writer also uses can use some other perspective as well. So we may have some mistake to recognize the perspective here. But one thing is important. If we see the narrator, just you will have to remember, the narrator will use for himself this second person pronoun. And if it is happening like this, then this one is second person pronoun. And another one, that this one is third person perspective. And this third person perspective is a little bit different from that of first person or second person, because we can notice that third person perspective is of 3 types. One is third person limited, third person objective, and another one is third person omniscient. So here, first of all, we can have a look here. The third person perspective uses he, she, it, and they. These are the personal pronouns used in case of third person perspective. It's a very common method of narration. Examples here we can see, he is just what a young man ought to be, said she. This she is third person perspective. And another you say, and I never saw such happy manners. If we think, oh, this I is used here, and that's why it can be also from the first person perspective. No, this is not. We'll have to think what the narrator is using for himself or herself, and this one is she, and this is the third person perspective used by the narrator or the writer to make the readers understand what about his or her perspective. So this one is important. And now, types of third person perspective. And I said that this third person perspective is of three types. One is third person objective. So how can we understand? Okay, third person pronoun is used here, he, she, they, like this. But how can we understand? The question may be aroused. Which one is third person objective? So in case of third person objective, the readers will find that an impersonal recorder or neutral observer narrates the facts or details to the readers. That means when we will see the narrators will only describe the facts, nothing 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 the thoughts and feelings of a character. No thoughts and feelings, if the only events are described by the narrators, then we will need to think about this, and we will have to determine it to be objective, third person objective. So if the events only described, in that case we'll have to think about this one is third person objective. And the third person omniscient, that means here the narrator reveals the thoughts and feelings not of a single character, but more than a single character, maybe two characters, maybe three characters. When the narrator reveals the thoughts and feelings of two characters, three characters, or more than three characters, in that case we will have to think it to be third person omniscient. And another one is third person limited. Third person limited, that means a little bit difference between third person omniscient and third person limited. Limited also, in limited, the writer also expresses the thoughts and feelings of a character. But here the narrator narrates only thoughts and feelings of the only one character, of a single character. But in third person omniscient, we say that this is the thoughts and feelings of more than one character. So there is obviously a difference between omniscient and third person limited. So I think this lesson is clear. So can you, if there is any confusion, sir, I like to have question. If there is any confusion or any sort of problem. Ghulam Rahman, sir. Actually, is it clear?
You can go ahead, sir. My only confusion that
yes,
is there any question related to these topics in
obvious,
O level?
so,
In
yes,
O
sir.
level,
So
O
yes,
level.
yes, sir. Actually,
Yes.
O level. Okay, sir. So here it is. Clear, right, sir? Okay, fine. Here is a worksheet, sir. Here is a worksheet, and I just mentioned a text. Here is the text. and we'll have to identify what about the narrator's perspective. Here, Brian could not bear to be on the roof of the skyscraper any longer. He was not usually afraid of the heights, but the wind was so strong and Rufus kept messing with him. Would you try to land on your feet or your head? Rufus asked with a straight face. Rufus could tell that he was getting to Brian, which only encouraged him to keep going. Let us go look over the edge, Brian, suggested Rufus, knowing full well that Brian would refuse. Now you just will have to take this passage into consideration to determine what type of perspective is here. So just I will have to tell you, then this one is not first person perspective, because I, the narrator, is not going to use here first person perspective. That one is first person personal pronoun is I. No I is here. Actually, uh, the writer or the narrator reveals the thoughts and feelings as well here. And this one is using third person perspective, he. So do you, can you have a look, sir, here, he the third person pronoun, right, sir? And you say here, if this one is third person, and that's why you'll have to think it to be third person perspective. But question, there is another question. If it is third person perspective, then we'll have to think, oh, the narrator, if the narrator narrates the thoughts and feelings of the character, if the narrator narrates the thoughts and feelings of the character, is it of only one character or more than one character? If it is only one character, then this will be third person